You know, over here on my channel, I really like to talk about the enshitification of culture, media, and life in general a lot, and I mentioned a ton on the various live streams that I appear on, and it looks like we are at peak enshitification, and it's happening with Magic the Gathering, a game that I used to adore playing. I have so many cards, and some of my favorite memories are playing with my brother or with my father or people at school, playing the tabletop version because Commander is a bastardization that needs to be left behind. But really, Magic the Gathering is ground zero for a lot of enshitification because the player base became so obsessed with their hordes that they didn't actually care about the actual game. And while card collecting is amazing, that's why I buy Pokemon cards, nobody really plays the game for the sake of the game anymore. And when people do play Magic the Gathering, it's all about the proxies and building the best deck you can have and having the best commander deck. I don't give a shit what you want to play. If you don't have the card in front of you, or if you bought the card specifically for your deck, I think you might be a bit of a loser. Magic the Gathering is best played when it's a couple of friends who collect the cards passively, throwing together whatever they have from any set available. You know, the tabletop rule set. And let me just go on a little side tangent. My backgrounds that I use are always from Wallpaper Engine. Tell me why I can't find a single wallpaper with the GOAT. Garruk? Where the fuck is Garruk? Where the fuck is my green giant? Where the hell is that peak embodiment of masculinity? And also, why does this one not have a Janie in it? I don't know what's going on, but they've got everyone else. They've got Jace, they've got Chandra, and they've got Liliana, but no Garruk or Janie? But while these are all just portions of what's wrong with Magic the Gathering, an article I just saw from Batting in the Comics just shows how in peak hell we're in. How utterly trashed, destroyed, and atrocious the state of Magic the Gathering and nerd culture as a whole has become, and it's all Funko Pop's fault. You see, over the last few years, Magic the Gathering has really gone into the Funkoization, or the fortnitification of pop culture, where they're so much more obsessed with just copying what everyone else is doing and having as many IPs into their own IP as possible, instead of actually improving their IP. Now, the first set that I personally remember them really going hard into this IPization of everything was their Beasts and Monsters set from 2021-ish, when the new Godzilla movies were coming out, and I bought one of them. I have the Godzilla Death Corona card, because it was a limited edition release that could only be found in that set, so I ordered a copy off of eBay, and I've never played with it, I've never taken it out of the box. It sits in a little sleeve, and it stays there because it's cool to have, because the card was banned shortly after being printed. But now they have My Little Pony sets, and Marvel's Avengers sets, and Doctor Who sets, and Lord of the Rings sets where they race swap actual characters from Lord of the Rings, because why the fuck not? And most importantly, and most recently, they have a Spongebob set. You heard me right, Magic the Gathering is now releasing a Spongebob crossover, where thankfully they aren't creating any new cards that are broken, because that's the thing. Most of these crossover sets are utterly broken and balanced, and they don't work in the flow of Magic the Gathering. They create entire new structures that make no sense outside of that framework, and you need to build a deck around that framework in order for the game to work. And while some of these cards make excellent joke cards, if they wanted to relegate these to joke sets that aren't legal in most other play, like the unset cards or the ones with the gears or horseshoes on them, that'd be perfectly fine. You know, there's one of the My Little Pony cards who has, it's Twilight Sparkle Planeswalker, I believe, and her ability is, friendship is magic, and the effect is, everyone wins the game. Yeah, that's a funny gimmick, but it's really freaking dumb to use that in a real game, but it's pretty fun in passive play, whatever, for fun play. But it ultimately violates the ethos of what Magic the Gathering it was always meant to be. It was supposed to be the serious card game to counteract games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, which were always a bit more on the jovial side. And so while these SpongeBob cards don't break the mold, don't break the meta, even though metas are stupid, they don't force you to use those cards if you actually want to win. Instead, these SpongeBob cards are just recolors, which I don't have nearly as much of an issue with, except for the fact that Magic the Gathering is selling them at a high price, hoping that you collect them all. And to be clear, my issue isn't that it's fun, and because don't get me wrong, these are fun, these cards are kind of funny, and I might, if it wasn't for the fact that I have a huge issue with Wizards of the Coast right now, I could easily see myself collecting a couple of these. The real issue is the principle of the matter, focusing instead of actually focusing on Magic the Gathering, they're homing in a lot on this IPization and this fortnitification of culture. And it is a direct violation of what Magic the Gathering has always stood for. Now, taking this article from Batting in the Comics, upcoming Magic the Gathering X SpongeBob SquarePants Secret Lair Drop is everything that's wrong with modern pop culture, written by Spencer Baculi. Ever since Wizards of the Coast announced that they would be opening up their wildly popular Magic the Gathering trading card game and allowing it for third-party IPs to get their own unique sets, its player base has been torn as to whether or not the move is overall beneficial or detrimental to the game's identity. And unfortunately for those in the former camp, the latter just got the best best evidence to their argument with the recent reveal of the upcoming SpongeBob SquarePants Secret Lair drop release. And while limited releases could be good for the longevity of the hobby and the brand, the problem is when I go to like Walmart and I look at the card section, almost all I see are Assassin's Creed card sets. I don't see any of the modern box sets. I don't see any of the sets from a couple years ago except for the Assassin's Creed set. That's all I find at any of these stores, and they're everywhere. I can't find any of the normal sets anymore. It's only the crossover sets actually being sold at places like GameStop or Walmart. Or even most of the card stores I go to are predominantly filled with these crossover sets. Now, this set was first announced in October 2024, and the upcoming limited edition set was fully unveiled on March 9th, courtesy of an exclusive preview provided by Collider, as made possible thanks to a direct partnership between the outlet and Wizards of the Coast. Divided into 3 separate packages according to card type, the SpongeBob SquarePants set will present players with no original cards, but rather 18 themed reprints of already existing cards, as was done with the previous Godzilla crossovers, including SpongeBob SquarePants Internet Sensation, Instant Sorceries, with a Counterspell, Daze, Inevitable Betrayal, Force of Despair, Night's Whisper, and Food Token. And while these are some pretty decent cards, in the way that they look, they're well structured and whatnot, and they're mostly highly recognizable memes, that's one of the problems that we'll be getting to in a moment. Then they also did one with the lands, and actually, I really love these. I have nothing wrong with these lands, other than the fact that you have to buy them in a special collector's tin. If they were just seeded in with another set, I'd be perfectly fine with it. The problem is that you have to go out deliberately searching for tins of these cards. And then their creature cards, which are all just specific characters reprinted over top of previous characters, which is kind of what they did with the Godzilla crossover, where in the set you could find a bunch of monster cards, and occasionally you'd find one of these monster cards as instead of the monster featured was a monster from the Monsterverse, as it tells you what the real card it's supposed to be is here, and then it shows you what it's pretending to be. Now, Betrayal goes on to mark that he himself has no real issues with the concepts at play here, and while I kind of agree, the issue isn't so much that it's being done, but the why and how it's being done. And then he goes on to explain that he actually in fact does use some of these crossover cards. For instance, he likes to troll with the Captain America vs. Avenger card. I do like that his cast is red, white, and blue. And I now see why Bakuli is so determined to use this card to troll, because Jesus Christ, this card is one of the perfect encapsulations of what's wrong here. With his ability throw, pay 3 colorless mana, unattach an equipment from Captain America, he deals damage equal to that equipment's mana value, divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. And then catch at the beginning of combat on your turn, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to Captain America. Now, for those of you who know nothing about Magic, basically what this means is at the beginning of your turn, you can pay 3 mana, which is just what you use to summon things, which is his base cost, so basically as much you need to cast him, to throw an equipment, which you attach to your card, based on how much that card costs to summon. And attachments can range in cost quite a bit. I've seen attachments up to, I believe, 9 is the highest converted mana cost I've seen on an attachment. And he can throw that and deal damage directly to targets, which include players, so hypothetically it wouldn't take too long to wipe out your opponent using this strategy. And then with his catch ability at the beginning of combat on your turn, now here's the thing, Magic is divided into phases. You have upkeep, draw, first phase, attack phase, final phase. So if I'm reading this card correctly and they didn't do some funky stuff with the rules around it, you could use his throw ability twice in one turn if you really wanted to. You start the round, you use throw the equipment. You begin your attack phase, get your equipment back, and then you do your throw ability again in your second phase. And while that leaves you unavailable to use throw on the next phase, if you have a high enough converted mana cost equipment, you could just burst down your opponent on one turn with him having no way to counterspell you. Bakuli goes on to say that I say all this not to peacock, puff my chest, or dismiss players who completely hate the idea of Universe Beyond. I completely understand how the appearance of someone like Ash Williams, Yuffie Kisaragi, or Craig Boone can break the game's immersion and make it feel more like an embarrassing Funko Pop style consumer whale trap than a serious game. And that's to say nothing of the effects their releases have had on the game's economy. And I do agree with some of that. I understand that people might enjoy these cards, and that's why I'm perfectly okay with the ones that just replace pre-existing cards with new art. But which is why I've issued the cards like this Captain America, which are completely and utterly broken. A lot of these crossover cards that just aren't redesigns of old cards are really unbalanced. And then, of course, like I said, what this has done to the economy around Magic cards. Magic cards are becoming far more popular, not because people are playing it, but because it's a significantly larger target for scalpers to go and try and ruin the base economy. If you remember what happened with the Lord of the Rings crossover set, where everybody was buying the packs just so they could try and find the one ring card, which is cool on paper and in concept, but in reality really ruins the economy of the game. It has temporarily turned Magic into an inflated property that has the same issues that Pokemon Pokemon TCG has, where people are going out and buying the packs just so they can resell them at higher profits. And then, of course, it is utterly power creeping so many of the older cards. For someone like me who doesn't want to constantly buy all the new sets and wants to use cards from every set, it's utterly irresponsible for them to constantly be inflating each set with stronger and stronger cards, so that 3 sets ago become completely irrelevant because of how badly power crept they have been from these crossover sets, because the crossover sets have to be the most bombastic thing ever to appease the IP that they're borrowing from. But Cooley continues, rather I see this so that you can understand when I say this release is everything wrong with modern entertainment culture. I'm not just offhand dismissing something because I don't like it. I'm truly trying to communicate that this set feels spiritually terrible. Not in the religious sense, but in the this feels like a betrayal of the human spirit sense. And I wholly agree. Like I said, I have no issue with some of the crossovers, but when you're just trying to cross over with anything you can just to draw in a couple of eyeballs, when you're so desperate that you're just going with the spaghetti against the wall strategy of copying Fortnite and copying Funko and just making it for everything so that maybe you might just find another niche who'll buy that one set and then never engage in the product. They've kind of forgotten the point of Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering, while it's a vehicle to sell cards, is about the game. And if people aren't playing the game, they're not going to keep buying the cards. Because unlike Pokemon, Magic cards have no inherent value to them. You know, no one's going out there and buying a set because it's got a new art for a Sarah Angel card in it. This is literally the definition of consume product, get excited for next product type of mentality. It is all about you just buy and buy and buy and buy and consume and consume and consume. Don't think about it. Don't play with the cards. Don't use them. Don't have any kind of value behind them. Just buy the next set, put them in a box somewhere, and then buy the next set when it comes out and put that in a box too. Now, I do like that Peculiar makes a little caveat for the Lands Under the Sea package, which is just the lands, because that one's kind of cute. It's just different locations of Bikini Bottom with Gary visiting them. And I've always been a pretty big fan of unique lands. My only issue is that you have to buy in a special tin. I'd much rather them just seed them throughout a separate different pack type. But the real problem is the internet sensation of Legends of Bikini Bottom drops, which featured new vector images made not just from various episode frames, but in the case of the former, from these specific frames which have since gone on to become internet memes. As mentioned before, these are the frames chosen for the internet sensation ones, where they've taken the special cards arts, where they've taken the special memes and put them onto the card arts. And while on the surface that might not seem like an issue, it is an issue for me because of what WoTC is known for. Wizards of the Coast has become one of the laziest companies out there, absolutely destroying any IP that they get their hands on, and they are notorious for using AI and any kind of sloppy laziness they can to get around things. They had an entire issue where one AI artist literally stole the art from an older card drawn by a different person and superimposed it into his AI drawing of a card. And then, of course, Wizards of the Coast going and using AI constantly in their advertisements for Magic sets, even though the Magic player base has made it very clear they don't want AI. And while I personally have very little issue with AI art, I do have an issue when you have the ability to afford to pay for a real artist. And when Magic the Gathering, one of the things that makes it so valuable is the art was always fantastic. Even the more bad art was very stylized and very visually interesting to look at. This instead is just, hey, we're going to drag and drop a common picture and just crop it a little bit to make it fit the card. It's laziness of the highest demand. And as Bikuli puts it, this comes off as a lazy and cynical cash grab whose sole purpose is meant to exploit the emotional connection one might feel to seeing recognizable imagery in the hopes of scoring a quick buck. And that's all any of the crossovers that have ever been. And Bikuli is completely correct. This is a how do you do fellow kids in the most extreme way. Problem is a lot of these other millennials are falling for the how do you do fellow kids as well, as they are really the target audience and not actual children. Then Bikuli goes on to do some death of the artist type of thing and talk about the fact that the creator of SpongeBob heavily hated the extreme IPization of SpongeBob. He hated how it became a corporate mascot and was everywhere. He wanted a break from it, and he would frequently complain about going out and just seeing SpongeBob everywhere. Recounting one story of one night I was really beat, and we worked really late, and I went to get food at some takeout place, and I leaned over against the gumball machine, just exhausted, and there was SpongeBob looking back, and it's just like, oh brother. But this extreme Fortniteification, this extreme enshitification that we're seeing is something that I talk about a lot on the live streams that I appear on, both on the weekday Rogues Gallery and Touch Grass with Theo Snodgrass. It is one of the most extreme problems that I've noticed, and it is destroying all instances of pop culture. First, they came for the players, and when they chase out all the original players of these IPs, they then replace with people who don't actually care about the IP and will just shovel any kind of slop into their mouths. And then when they realized they had the most lowest common denominator players left, that's when they pounced and just made the game as lowest common denominators possible. That's why we're getting all these enshitified sets. That's why they're power creeping and making the need to buy old cards irrelevant. That's why they're encouraging people to constantly go out and just wail on every set so they can't have any competitive edge if they're using older cards. And that's why Commander has dominated, and they have taken, Wizards of the Coast has personally taken over control of the Commander set, so that now they can determine what the ban list is, and therefore they can ban cards that are meta and replace it with new metas so that you buy new cards. Consume product and get excited for next product. That's pretty much all I've got. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this set, and I will see you guys on the next one.